Okay. Welcome everybody to the ordinary meeting, Snowy Valleys Council, 22nd of November 2018. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners and pay my respects to elders past and present. Do we have any apologies? No apologies? No. Declarations of pecuniary interest? No, there's no public forum. Confirmation of the minutes of the previous meeting. Want to move those? Councillor Benjamin, Councillor Cross. Anything arising from those minutes? Nothing? Can I ask a question on Snowview Estate, Mr. Stone? When do we expect that to happen?
Mr Mayor, the resolution is to refer the construction to next year's budget.
Yep.
And in the meantime, we'll be proceeding with subdivision to convert 2 lots on one of the stages into 3 to make them more saleable.
And when will they be for sale?
They'll be ready for sale after that process, so within the next 12 months.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
I just asked through you, Mr Mayor, if the General Manager could give us an update on the refurbishment. I know there's a press release gone out, but perhaps just further advice about it for the public.
Through the Chair, the refurbishment works will start soon, so our customer service centre will move up to the first floor of the building. Various staff will be moving out across the region. Our Director of Assets and Infrastructure will be moving through to the depot. I will be moving down to the Tumbarumba office for the period of refurbishment, and I'll let councillors know where other staff are as we finalise those arrangements. But those moves have started today.
Thank you, Mr General Manager. And might I just compliment the General Manager? It's been a year in office and it's been a great year. So thank you very much for the first year at Snowy Valleys Council. Councillor Isselman.
If I may, Mr Mayor, 11.2 minutes of the Tumut Youth Council Committee meeting held. Just a question here. I see the Tumut Youth Council Committee meeting minutes coming through, but I'm not seeing as regularly the Tumbarumba Youth Council minutes coming through. So I'm just asking if we could pay attention to that. It would be good if we had both Youth Council minutes on a regular basis. So just drawing our attention to that, because I'm not seeing the Tumbarumba Youth Council minutes coming through.
I have noticed them come through in the past, but
but not as regular. They're not as I see.
Noted. Could I speak on 10.2, Mr Mayor?
Matters like blue-green algal blend management options?
Yeah, from here, I was under the understanding that there would be regular testing on it. Through you, Mr Mayor, could I ask Phil Stone about that?
You may. Yep. Mr Stone?
I believe that testing is about to commence, or has commenced, or have some more.
Yeah, through you, Mr Chair. Yeah, we confirmed earlier today that testing has commenced. Two rounds of testing have been completed, and we're chasing down those results so we can make those available.
So when you're saying they're available, so they're being sent out by email to interested parties?
We're actually going to put them on the website, make them available through council's website.
Okay. And is there going to be anything in the paper for people who are visiting who want to use Manus Lake and whether or not they can go fishing or whatever?
Yes.
So in the paper, email, and on the website.
Yes.
And signage at the lake.
Yes.
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 So there's a fold-down sign.
Yes.
Okay. And I do notice in the press there's Griffith are doing a study as well on Lake Wangan, so it might be useful to get their results from what they're doing. Yeah.
And I'd like to also discuss where the money's coming from for this, but we'll move over when we talk about finances.
In the quarterly budget review?
Yeah, okay. That's okay.
Mr. Lowe?
Just in relation to 10.4, it's a bit of a stretch, this, but it talks about road management policy and road gazettables and things like that. I noticed that I made some inquiries during the week about the traffic committee, and it appears that our traffic committee is in a state of flux. I think probably because the local member hasn't assigned anyone yet, and we've had a departure from our committee from the staff, so I just wanted to bring that.
Through the chair, we'll follow up that committee and make sure we talk to Dr. McGowan about that and arrange the next meeting, which will probably be in the new year.
Thank you, Councillor Ryder. Nothing further? I've got a move in a second. I'll put the motion all in favour of adopting those minutes. Carried. Thank you. Notice of motion, climate change review in council areas, page 15. Councillor Pritchard.
Page 19, Mr Mayor.
I do notice that the first line of that notice of motion has been omitted. It should read under the recommendation, in view of this just released IPPC report on climate change, Snowy Valleys Council undertakes. Correct?
Yep, and an urgent review of its community strategic plan with a view to protect its communities from climate change, addressing the issue at council level. The first step could be to undertake a strengths, weakness and opportunities, threats study.
So Councillor Pritchard, we've got you moving that, Councillor
Yes.
Smith seconding it.
Yeah.
Councillor Pritchard, I'd like to speak.
Climate change obviously is a gigantic contemporary issue, and it's something that's a lot of debate at national and international level, but that's not our business. Our business is to recognise where we stand and what's going to happen here in the future, and to protect our community, protect it in many ways, in economic ways, but protection from bushfires, health and whatever, and all these issues at a community level. We don't want to get involved with the national politics. I put this notice of motion a month ago after this IPPR report, which highlighted the seriousness of the changes that are occurring and likely to occur. But since I put that notice of motion, there's been another event, and that is the California wildfires, which were the worst in California history, and just devastated the town of Paradise. It's quite apparent that climate change is affecting these smaller rural communities at a greater level. Now we have to, I think, not just beat around the bush. I think we need to have a proper study to look at the strengths of our community in a new climate environment. It's not all good. The changes aren't all going to be bad. There are going to be some opportunities for us to encourage different types of horticulture and viticulture. I had a message from the district horticulturist just here and now, and I'll read it. Dear Jeff, can you please include temperate fruit horticulture in the scope of the climate change review being discussed by Council this week? Important for the industry and for carbon capture on high value horticultural land around Battler and Tumbarumba. So the horticulturists are realising that they have better opportunities with climate change, because we've got a high rainfall, cool area there. And I just know from my personal point of view, growing the flowers and things, that the fungus diseases are lesser in the last couple of years. And if you look around Tumut at the moment, you can see the roses are all best they've been for years because of the climate change. So there are positives. And I think we'll be able to attract development in people who want to live in cooler climates such as Battler and Tumbarumba. I think we've got great advantages. On the other hand, we will suffer in other areas. And one of them is the exposure to bushfires. And I think we need to have proper bushfire protection plans around our towns, and the planting of vegetation clearances and so forth, because we don't want something happening to Paradise, such as happened to Paradise in California just recently. But I think we need to do this properly, not just beat around the bush, and have a proper study of the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats for our community, and how we can take actions to overcome any problems in the future. Not only will it help our community, but we should be able to act as pace setters for other communities. We can solve things at the local level which the state and federal governments can't do.
Thank you, Councillor Pritchard. You have a speaker again.
I'm not going to
Other speak.
agreeing with you, Councillor Pritchard, but also I think we do need to look at the council operational plan and just realise how much is actually in it, that we are actually addressing these issues. And you know, do we spend a lot of time on SWOT analysis and going through what we've already come up with anyhow? So I think that probably needs to all be jumped.
And I think, can I just add with the NPI report, had a fair bit to do with those over the years, and that's done on, you know, Tumut and Tumbarumba. In Tumbarumba, you know, the variations that were there, and it's done on the amount of energy used to drive the sawmills because it's major developments.
Point of order, Mr Mayor. Can I move to committee so Bruce can serve Councillor?
Oh. Councillor Wilson.
Move to committee, please.
Councillor Cross. All in favour? Okay. Keep going.
Oh, right, okay. Sorry, I don't follow procedure well sometimes. But the so the National Pollution Index, not index, anyway, is every year you put in a report, each one of the major lots. So we Visy, Pine, Carter Holt Harvey, or what, AKD now, and probably.
That's the other motion.
Oh, sorry, okay.
But I think it all comes in together. Possibly there's an opportunity, I think, for a forum on this climate change forum relating to our local area. Now, whether the council's the organiser of that, or whether it's something for the Tumut community organisation or Rotary or something like that. But I certainly think there's scope for it, given the amount of interest in it. And I take your point with bushfires. Bushfires are certainly going to be a great risk, and what the devastation of Paradise is just.
I think we should lead that. I think we're in a position to lead that for our whole community, the SVNC community.
And I think a forum's a tremendous idea across the whole council area.
Yep.
The thing about bushfires is that for some years I've been suggesting that we establish zones around our townships for protection from fires, because we don't want a situation where pine trees are built up too close to our communities, such as happened in Paradise. If you look at the photographs of Paradise, you see the place is burnt out, but you see where the pine trees are still where was they were growing in amongst the communities. I think we need to get the environmental plans changed so that townships can establish their boundaries. At the present moment, I don't see a proper mechanism to do that. We need to look formally at the types of vegetation we plant around the townships. In 1982, in South Australia and Victoria, they had enormous fires. It was called the Ash Wednesday fires. And they analysed the outcome of the different houses and things, the way they protected the species of trees that were planted and so forth. I think we need to do this properly and look at, as you say, have a proper forum. I would suggest perhaps we ask Dr. McGowan to see if he can chair the meeting.
Okay, that's something we could do. Yeah. But certainly catastrophic fires are nothing new. I think we have to go back to 1905 to find one that came right through.
Yeah. And there are other things too, with the extra heat. We're getting more of our community in Tumut here getting stressed by the heat, and we need to have areas where people can safely go and get some relief in air-conditioned areas, such as in our building here or other buildings. But at the present moment, all they're doing is going to coals and waters to cool off in the heat.
Thank you, Councillor Fisher. Would someone, yes?
Could I just add to this? I don't think in the notice of motion here, I'm supporting what Jeff has said. The wording of the notice of motion is difficult because it suggests we undertake a review of our community strategic plan, and I don't believe that's something that we should be entering into, much the same as Councillor Ham's just said. To go into that level of review at this stage would be inappropriate for our council to undertake. We have just passed that particular important document, and I think the idea of this particular motion, as it's worded, is not appropriate for us to actually undertake, because reviewing the community strategic plan is not a simple task. This is a huge task for us to suggest that we're going to undertake. So to move this motion as it stands at the present moment would be very unwise of this council.
Are you suggesting a change? undertakes an urgent review of
Or a forum.
I like the forum idea. The forum's a great idea.
We need an outcome.
With outcomes?
we need
an
it.
outcome.
I agree.
An outcome, so it's another talk fest, another report to put on a shelf. We need to have an outcome which we've got the community behind us, and we can take to the state government and the federal government to change their planning laws and the like.
But
Well, this
we
is a
could
very
do that with
serious
a
issue.
forum though, can't we, Jeff? To have those outcomes, to take those
Depends how it's
concerns.
structured.
Do it properly.
It
Yeah,
has to be done properly.
yeah.
We'll get Malcolm Turnbull to chair it.
He's got a lot of type.
I would also suggest that as much as we would go into a review of our needs as a Snowy Valleys Council for all our communities to recognise the need for addressing the issues of climate change, I don't think we can absolutely say to protect. We can say to reduce the risk, but I don't think we could ever use the word to protect our community. I think that's beyond the scope of any council in any district to be
We
able to
just need
say
to
It
be
has to be your
proactive.
aim.
reduce the risk is an aim,
Oh, really?
but protect is a big
Oh,
over-the-top
plain as
word.
words, Margaret.
That's what we're about.
Certainly, it's all semantics, but
Yeah.
we can aim to protect.
Yeah.
Perhaps. Can I suggest that we adopt the 3 points of the General Manager with a fourth one, which says, and facilitate a forum on climate change and its impact on Snowy Valleys Council.
Perhaps chaired by the local member.
Perhaps.
Do you think?
Through the chair, I wouldn't recommend we get that specific in the resolution. We can
Okay.
certainly look at that, but we don't need to get.
So, with that amendment, are we happy to go out of committee?
Move that we go out of committee.
Councillor Risselman, Councillor Ham, all in favour? Carried. So, Councillor Pritchard, are you happy with that change?
No, I'm not unhappy with it, but I think it should be done properly, so I need a formal amendment
Yep.
moved by Margaret,
It's up there on the board now.
seconded by somebody else.
It's up there on the
Okay,
board.
so you'd like an amendment to the motion?
Oh, I'm happy for it to be there. It's up to Jeff whether he wants to put it
No,
as an
no.
amendment or just an addition.
I'll put it up. You have to put a formal
All right,
amendment.
I'll put a formal amendment up that amendment is.
So you've moved the amendment,
Move
which
that
is number 4,
Yes,
and the General Manager's recommendations.
yes.
Through the chair, just process matter. So it was moved by Councillor Pritchard, seconded by Councillor Smith. The actual resolution that was put forward from Councillor Pritchard, I think we actually need to significantly different the General Manager's recommendation. I think you probably need to vote
Yes, I
on
was
what's
getting
been
to that.
moved, and then you may move an alternative one if that one doesn't get up.
But, Mr General Manager, we've only moved the notice of motion, we haven't moved 1 to 4.
So the moving was what was put forward by Councillor Pritchard.
Yep.
So it's moved and seconded. Councillor Pritchard's recommendation.
Yep.
We haven't moved
Yeah. So
We
that's
moved
that
the
up there in the view of
recommendations.
just released IPPC report.
Yep.
Whereas what you've just been discussing has been the recommendation that's been put forward by myself, which is the 4 dot points.
And I'm moving that those 4 dot points be
So
accepted.
you need to vote on the original motion first. Yeah, and if that doesn't get up, then you can
Put forward that.
put forward the four dot points.
I'm with you.
Unless Councillor Pritchard and Councillor Smith wish to withdraw their motion, and someone puts forward a different one.
Councillor Pritchard,
I'm not going to restore it.
not going to withdraw it.
All right. So put it forward.
So put it to the vote.
Okay. Any further discussion? I'll put to the vote that in view of the just released IPCC report on climate change, etc. All in favour? That's call for a division. 1, 2, 1, 2,
Councillor Isselman.
I put forward the recommendations 1, 2, 3, and the fourth one, which is a forum.
Thank you. Okay, so now we have a motion from Councillor Isselman, which is 1 to 4. Seconded, Councillor Ham. Discussion, Councillor Isselman. Happy with, we've discussed it fully. Any further, any speaker against?
Could you read that again? I'm sorry.
Everyone clear?
Well, 1, 2 and 3 are there. Seeing you've knocked back the motion, they're redundant.
Oh, they are too.
They're no longer effective, no longer, they've been abolished. So all you're talking about is number 4.
Yes, that's correct.
So you're moving number 4.
Number 1.
Sorry, not yet.
Which is number 1.
Which is number 1.
Number 4 becomes the new number 1.
Yes.
Okay. Moving second, happy with that? Happy with that?
Yep.
Yes,
Thank
exactly.
you for
Thank you very much.
clarifying that, Councillor Pritchard.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll put the motion. All in favour? Carried. Thank you. Thanks very much, Councillor Pritchard. I think
It's a good thing.
it's a good result. Now we've got a late urgent notice of motion. Pollution problem. The motion is that Council inquire with the EPA the reasons for and the mitigating measures being taken to protect and reduce the localities included in postcode 2720 from pollution.
Yeah,
Councillor Pritchard.
I believe that in consultation with the General Manager, this was prompted by a report that on the ABC News about the pollution occurring in New South Wales, in Australia, by postcode definition. And Tumut stood out there as being number 5 in New South Wales in the smaller areas. And this became out to the general community, and I was very disturbed that would have a great impact on our reputation for tourism, our reputation for settlement, and it's something that we had to address. It was easy to sort of pretend it didn't occur, but it had to so we'd be negligent if we didn't address it. I have for some years been pushing to have proper monitoring of the pollution levels in this town. And I just recently raised the issue of the standing out the footpaths in our town, and nothing's happened about that. So I think this is the first step in trying to look at what pollution levels we get, where they're coming from, and try and implement measures to reduce them. And also, I think we need to do that from a future development point of view, because the last thing on earth we want, I think, is to bring in new industries here which will increase the pollution. It may give us an opportunity to look at the whole health issues of the community. An extraordinarily high level of asthma and those sort of respiratory conditions. And this is the first step, I think, in trying to make that community
Thanks,
safer.
Councillor Pritchard, and certainly it's something that needs addressing, and anything we can do to improve the community. Councillor
Councillor Larder.
Can I just move that we move into committee on this? Just to...
Yep.
Seconded.
Yep.
Thank you. All in favour?
Yep.
Councillor Larder, Councillor Listener.
Oh yeah,
Councillor Larder.
I think this is important, but I'm just wondering whether we can elaborate on this a bit further, even soon as we've got this motion up as it stands. Councillor Pritchard has passionately also spoken about the need for data collection with regard to medical synopsis, Australia-wide, and I think the government is making some effort in regard to this with its national health card registration, which Councillor Pritchard could probably speak more on. But I wonder whether we could also identify cancer clusters specifically within our region and compare them with other local government areas to see whether there is any data that supports that there is issues.
Whether we have them or not.
Yeah. Because there's always been speculation, as there would be in any local government area, that they exist, and I think it would be good to actually, in real terms, look at whether that's correct or incorrect.
I agree completely with you, John. I've been pushing for many years that we have a national health records at a national level. I mean, I actually lived through the days of cigarette smoking being recognised as a threat, and what I saw firsthand, the cancer of the lung and gangrenous legs as a result of people with nicotine on their fingers. It took about 40 or 50 years for that to be recognised at a national level. Had that data gone onto those patients' records, cigarette smoking, yes, no, cancer of the lung, yes, no, and over some years they would have been able to press a button on the computer and got a definitive answer immediately. And we can do that with other conditions, cancer clusters, all sorts of other things. And so I applaud the federal government for going into this plan. It's a pity that people can opt out. I think it's the most marvellous research tool. I mean, we see operations being promoted all the time for about different things, but we never see what the outcomes are. We don't know when they died, whether they had re-operations or recurrences and so forth, but it's a step in the right direction.
I was very interested to see that Tumbarumba's got a medium. I'd like to look at 2653 as well. And I think we should look at the council area all round, and I was stunned to see
so
that.
was I.
Yeah.
Margaret pointed out that Batlow wasn't getting it.
Batlow's got a 0.
But if you look at the fine
How can
print
that
there,
happen?
I can explain why.
Okay,
if you look
over
at
to you, Councillor Wright.
If you look at the fine print, it said that they only if they don't have recognised polluting industries in that postcode, but it didn't look at it. That's what Batlow had said.
That's the only reason. See, nobody actually goes and checks the levels in the towns.
Yep.
It's done by
So this is what you were talking about earlier.
Yes, by a report that major industry has got to do, like pollution industry. Hine, Busy, Carter Holt Harvey, they're probably both Carter Holt Harveys. I'm not sure about the chip plant, but certainly those three. And what it is you have to do a report. I did the report every year for Hine, the last 10 years or more, and it's the amount of fuel you use, like we burn sawdust to generate heat to dry timber, so it had to be tons of sawdust consumed for heat generation. The amount of litres, or thousands of litres of fuel used in the mobile equipment. The amount of mileage that trucks used travelled on our site, so a log truck comes into the gate of Hine Timber to when it goes out, how many kilometres that is, and whether it's on sealed roads or unsealed roads. It's quite it used to take me weeks to do every year. There's another one in there. But basically that's what it is. So then we do that, send that report in, and that goes to onto the website. That's been going on for years and years. So you can look back over a lot of years, and I can remember, I don't know if I should own up to it, but I made a mistake one year and they chased me up and said, look, it's gone down or it's gone up. I can't remember what it was, but I'd made a blue on the amount of tonnes of sawdust we'd used, dropped a 0 off or added 1 on, something or other, But so it is read and before it's put up on. So Batlow, for instance, doesn't have a major polluting industry there. doesn't happen. Chairman has to have 2 or 3, sure, certainly 2. And that's really all it is, you know, like, and if it's the amount of trucks that come on your site, how many forklifts you've got, how many people you've got, I think that might be the other one, how many people you have there, and it just goes into a database and then spits out a figure. So it's not a real feel. It's not a real figure, if you know what I mean. You know, like there's and it's how people report on it.
And that's what they've used for this report.
Absolutely.
And it's not an air testing pollution exercise or anything like that.
Nothing at
So
all.
if you don't have those reports going in annually, such as agricultural areas such as Batlow, it's a bit disingenuous to put communities like Batlow as 0 and Tumut as number 1 when the search for where it is polluted is skewed because it's got nothing to do with what the emissions are.
Absolutely.
The really important part about this is, I believe, this particular report is politically driven because we've got an upcoming election.
Its report comes out every year.
Yeah, and it's been highlighted for that reason.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
It's very sad that the Tumut Township and the Tumbarumba Township have been given this label unfairly. I take on board that Councillor Pritchard has some very definite views, and I'm not disclaiming what he says about the air pollution and the air quality within our community here in Tumut. But the fact remains is that this particular report doesn't demonstrate that that's what has been tested.
Exactly.
And that's what's wrong.
And maybe you look at somewhere like, I don't know, think of somewhere like, say, Gundagai, that has no major polluting industry. Maybe the meatworks. I don't know. Say Coolac, for instance, and where there's how many thousand trucks run through there every day, with a huge amount of pollution coming off their exhaust. It measures nothing, but it might be far more polluted than Tumut.
That's right.
It's also a self-reporting. You're reporting on your particular industry. Who oversees that your results are right?
Okay.
Very, very good question.
We might wrap that. Councillor Smith.
I'd like to just make the comment that for 18 years I've been driving the roads from Batlow down to Tumut off and on, and sometimes quite frequently, and have been quite appalled at the visual effects of pollution in the Tumut Valley. And I also saw the news item that Councillor Pritchard has commented on and based this motion on, and for that reason I was quite happy to support that motion and second it. And perhaps what it means is that there should be some actual testing done in view of Councillor Wright's comments to find out whether this is a real figure or whether this is just a paper figure that has been put forward.
Of course.
And certainly there were testing sites in the past. I know there was one on where I grew up, on Havilah. There was a testing site from Visy. And there was one in Tumut as well as the quite extensive testing that's done at Visy, so we might need to chase that up. I've got a few changes suggested here to the motion, Jeff, just in addition that we add Tumbarumba's postcode in as well, and that we put on the end and further request the government relate the pollution data with health data to see if there is any correlation.
2653 as well.
Did Wallace come up?
Wallace was high too.
Yeah. And of course, you know, there's a town quite to the west of us that's got a mining operation quite a long way from the town, and it's very high.
For exactly the same reason.
Same reason, yeah. So it's not great press. But anything that can be done to improve the breathability of the place, and also anything we can do to correlate some health data with that would be great.
Move that we go out of committee.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Essendon, all in favour? Carried. Which just brings us to the
Yeah, for the motion.
Put this motion. We've got Councillor Pritchard and Smith. You're happy with that addition?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. Any further comment? Any further closing, Councillor Pritchard?
Oh, just that it's a while since I looked it up, but it's pretty cheap nowadays to buy automatic monitoring apparatus electronically. If we stick into the council depot or something like that, we can do it ourselves very cheaply, as well as the government.
Thank you. Put the motion all in favour? Carried. Right. I have a mayoral minute. This is that council approved to move the December meeting of council from the 13th to the 11th of December 2018 in the Tumbarumba office. Councillor Ham. Councillor Risselman. Councillor Ham, any discussion?
I think it's an excellent idea.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I
Anyone
support it too.
against? Put the motion all in favour? It's carried. Thank you. Now I've lost my agenda. Okay, moving on. Page 20, I'm on. Local Government Annual Conference. The recommendation is the Council receive the report on the Local Government New South Wales Annual Conference from the General Manager. Councillor Ham, Councillor Cross. Councillor Ham.
First of all, I'd like to thank Council for the opportunity to go. It's my first Local Government New South Wales conference. Found it very interesting, found it great for networking, learnt a lot, met lots of people. It was very worthwhile going, more so than I anticipated. I loved the way it was in Albury, in a regional area that we could all relate to, and I found that great. I have to make note of the respectful protests that, say, the Tumbarumba Shire did have there. There was a big sea of orange, and I note that the General Manager's put that we will have a report to Council on that, and it's been a separate report to be presented in early 2019. I think I would be happy if we could have that in 2018 in the December meeting.
Yeah, through the chair, I'm waiting on information back from the Office of Local Government at the moment, but pending that coming through, we'll try and get that to that December meeting.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Ham. Councillor Cross?
Yes, I was really interested to read the summary of what actually happened, and I wanted to pick up on a couple of points of interest for me. The timber bridge funding, and whether that's possible for us to be able to get that, because I was down at the Villa Park the other day, and all the Year 12 people were lining up having their photo taken on the old bridge, and it's kind of like your right to have your photo, your bridal photos and all those sort of things on the bridge, and it would be lovely to see if it could be restored, if there is funding available for that. The other thing I was interested in was the talking about the recycling and the waste, and I would suggest that this it would be a really great project for our team, communications team, I think it is, to do a video on what you can recycle, because I think people are still a bit not sure about that, and also about food waste. And I was reading that there's an app that's developed where people can find out who's got a compost bin and go along with their compost and share it, and vice versa. And I thought that might be something that we could even think about doing within our region, because we ask our neighbours to chuck their waste into our compost bin because of the fence. So they were the things that I picked up on that I thought were really interesting.
Thank you, Councillor Cross.
It was okay.
With another comment there.
I'd just like to pass a comment on Councillor Scott, President of the Local Government New South Wales, comment when over 100 resolutions were passed at the conference, and she made it very clear, and I'm hoping that as people who were not in attendance at the conference recognise this, that the Local Government New South Wales group will only be able to attend probably 5 of those 100 resolutions. And you might see that in the notes that have been given here that from last year's conference they actually attended to only 4 of the motions that were put at the conference. So it's important to recognise that there's a willingness to hear and to listen to points of view from all sectors of council, but the fact is that Local Government New South Wales will be prioritising probably 4 or 5 of those, and one of them has been waste so far, as you've possibly noticed by some of the emails we've been getting from Local Government New South Wales. So it's important not to get too excited about the 100 motions and what has been moved in relation to a whole lot of contentious issues around local government, and recognise that there is only going to be 4 or 5 that will actually get high profile. So it's something to consider.
And didn't Linda Scott do an excellent job?
Absolutely.
So that means that our council has to get more proactive itself, rather than relying on.
Absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely. We were lacking.
Okay. Thank you. Anything further, Councillor Smith?
Mr. Mayor, I would like to comment on the waste component, crisis or opportunity, and I would suggest that this council set up some sort of committee to investigate opportunities, potential opportunities to turn what might be waste across a wide area of maybe New South Wales or southern New South Wales, to bring into the Shire here to turn into a useful product, such as the road base or that sort of thing. And the big opportunity that exists, and I don't think anyone has really been able to find a good use for old mattresses, for example. We've often talked about empty trucks coming back and empty railway containers coming back to our community through Visi. Maybe if we can utilise some of that opportunity and create an industry, or suggest perhaps support someone to create an industry that could be very helpful to our region.
Thank you, Councillor Swid. I might ask the General Manager to comment.
Through the Chair, Council are preparing a waste management strategy at the moment, so it might be something that, as we consult on that you might want to have some input into. The EPA also runs a funding program for innovative solutions to waste issues. And that's closed this year, but it might be something that we'll look at in future years, and certainly can look to adopt that sort of promoting that innovative approach to waste management in that waste management strategy.
Good.
Thank you. Councillor Love.
Is that going to include the green waste?
It will, yes.
Okay, I'll put the motion all in favour. Carried. Moving on to 9.2, governance and financial reports. Can I suggest an addition to point 1, that we've noticed a couple of errors in the document. So just, if Council adopts the draft Snowy Valleys Council Annual Report 2017-18 with minor amendments approved by the Mayor and General Manager. So that there's spelling mistakes and the like.
Yeah.
Front cover photos, yeah, those sort of things.
Is there anything, sorry, through Mr. Mayor, is there anything else that we can also raise about the annual report?
Would you like to move the recommendation with those?
Sorry, yes.
Councillor Cross?
Yes.
Seconder, Councillor Risselman? Councillor Cross?
I think the staff should be congratulated on getting that through. I think it's a brilliant document. I think we sold ourselves short on garage sales because I think that it's part of our community strategic plan that we take it, and it's showing that we're taking a leading role in recycling and that whole concept of passing it on, saving on landfill, and that it's a way that the ratepayers can help us to reduce landfill. So I would like to add that as a comment for that. The other query, a quick query, and I know I'm sure it's all been done, but just for my personal satisfaction, there was a photo of the children in our annual report, and I just wanted reassurance that you had sought signed written permission for those children to be in that document.
Through Mr. Mayor, yes, I'll make sure that is confirmed, and if it isn't, then we'll adjust the photograph. I'm pretty sure it is.
Thank you. Any further? Put the motion with that slight change. All in favour? Carried. Thank you. Council meeting calendar. Once again, there's a slight change there, and that is on the Thursday, the 12th of December 2019, rather than the 19th. Councillor Ham, are you moving that way?
I will agree.
And I'll second that for you.
Thank you, Councillor Isman. Any, Councillor Ham, any comment?
That seems like a very sensible idea.
Thank you. Put the motion. All in favour? Carried. Okay, 9.4, policies for adoption, complaints management policy, fraud and corruption control policy and petitions policy. There's 4 recommendations there. And I might also note that I've asked for a report to be prepared for councillors on information regarding credit card usage within the Snowy Valleys Council, given in light of current media reports. So that's what we've done. So that should be fairly soon. So the recommendations, there's 4 recommendations there. Councillor Smith, Councillor Wright, Councillor Smith.
Yes, I'd like to commend the people that developed this document because it does make the relationship between councillors and council staff and management a lot clearer, and it's very helpful to outline some of the reasons why these policies are required and needed, and I believe that they will hopefully prevent a lot of misunderstanding, and there have been some situations where members of the staff have been...
Councillor Smith, that probably relates to the next, to 9.5.
I'm sorry.
You might be a bit ahead of us.
Yes, sorry, I am there.
That's okay. Back to complaints management, fraud and corruption control. Anything?
No, I've got nothing more than that.
Nothing? Okay, we'll get this one out of the way and then we'll call on Councillor Smith.
Thank you.
All in favour? Carried. Staff interaction policy for adoption. Councillor Smith, you moving that way?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wright, Councillor Smith. Carry on.
Well, not to repeat all that was said before, but it is a good document, and it does, I think, cover a lot of the need to clarify the position of relationship between council officers or officials and council management and staff, and it's important to have those policies in place.
Thank you. Anyone further? Nothing else? Put the motion. All recommendations, all in favour? Carried. Thank you. Moving on to quarterly budget review. Councillor Ham. Councillor Benjamin. Councillor Ham.
First thing I'd say is, I suppose, what am I, 13, 14 months, 15 months into this, it is just great to get these quarterly budget reviews with such clarity that you can actually see what's going on. So congratulations to you once again, Robin, on that. And I suppose something that's been brought up to me has been about the blue-green algae and down at Tumut. And it is in this area, isn't it, that we found? I think it's part of the attachment. that there's $54,000 going towards the testing.
Yeah, it's in the attachment, yes.
Yeah, $54,000 is going towards the testing of the blue-green algae, and for UTS to have a consultant from UTS to come and give a summation of, after the year, how best we can handle blue-green algae in the Manus Lake. Now, it's been brought to my attention that there's been a concern that $54,000 has come out of reserves from $150,000 that was put aside from after the Tumut Bushfire Fund. That's my understanding of it. So, as someone who lives on a farm, and if there'd been a fire go through, so I would be quite annoyed that that is now being used by something that is recreationally used in Tumbarumba. So, having not been part of the council at that time, would it be all right if, through the chair, if I ask the general manager, what was that money given to Tumut for? How has it been allocated? Is it right to use it this way? And how can we justify this?
Thank you, Councillor Ham. General Manager.
Through the chair, Councillor Ham, the money was allocated to put a communications tower in. Alternative funding was found for that, and the communications tower is now in place. So that money was held in reserve by the former Tumbarumba Shire, and that reserve has continued into the reserves with the Snowy Valleys Council. There was no requirements on those funds to actually use them in any particular manner. However, it's seen appropriate by staff, and hence the recommendation to use some of that money for impacts on that local community. And that general community, the farmers, are impacted by the effects of the blue-green algae, and hence for us to look at what infrastructure we need to put into the lake there to try and mitigate that issue. We felt that it was appropriate to use those funds for that purpose.
So the remaining 96,000 though, will that, if we need an agitator or something, will that be used for that, or will we put in for a grant for an agitator? Or?
At this stage, the thought of council staff is that the rest of the funds will be, yeah, and we will look at what funding opportunities are available, and if there aren't funding opportunities available, then we'll have to look at other council reserves to actually fund whatever those capital works are that are needed on the lake, if that's seen as appropriate. But it's important that we do this investigation and find out and ascertain directly what is going to have the best impact, rather than spending the money up front on some infrastructure that may not work. And that came through in the initial investigation by UTS.
Okay, so if I was a resident of Tumut though, but we suddenly needed something else, we can, yeah, I mean that would be considered a draw from another reserve sort of thing. So it's not as if that money was, yes, must be spent into.
No.
And I think really through it's going to be spent.
Well, it was spent.
Yeah, and also the Tumut people are all downstream from the lake, and they are the ones who are suffering from blue-green algae anyway. So we can stop it up the top. It's going to help everybody all the way through. I think that's important.
Anything further? We've got to move in a second now. Anything further from the...
Yeah, that would be great.
So the first quarter review, it's always, because the gross income in July, the major income of being rates in July, we usually always report a profit, so that is reflected on page 161. The major changes throughout to the income and expenditure was stronger communities infrastructure major projects to be reduced by $120,000 per annum to fund a temporary communications officer. There was a reduction of $140,000 to fund the free entry into pools. This was funded through corporate support and economic development, both by $35,000, and asset and design salaries by $70,000. A water grant of $1 million was not successful, so we've reduced the income by $1 million. $10,000 was allocated to roadshows, which was funded through a reduction in the finance salaries. The $54,000 that Julia referred to was allocated to fund sampling, testing, and a study of the management options of blue-green algae. $10,000 was allocated for drug and alcohol testing, and fund work improvement teams of $25,000 from the people, culture and governance salaries. So then a brief rundown of the capital budget. So we're only 6% through, but construction, it's not a major time for construction. Construction periods, peak periods are between second and third quarter, so you should see that improve. And other than that, we're tracking well. Anyone else have any questions?
Is drug and alcohol testing something new? Has it happened before? This is the first time on.
Yeah, through the chair, if I could respond to that question. Drug and alcohol testing is commonplace in industry, and what's happening here in Snowy Valleys is that we're just implementing what is best practice other places. So it's been through the appropriate channels of reviewing our policy and procedure on that. It's been through our consultative committee and through various other channels, and it's, yeah, we're well happy with it.
It's totally random, and
it's random, absolutely random.
And the $1 million water grant that we were unsuccessful with, if I'm not in contact with. So are we reapplying for that as soon as possible? And that water grant, was that to secure Tumbarumba's water supply?
I'm sorry.
Just wondering that $1 million water grant that we weren't successful in, are we applying again? And was that specifically to secure Tumbarumba's water supply?
Yes, so that's correct. That $1 million grant that we applied for was to secure the Tumba water supply through works on the dam.
Yeah, great.
Yes, we continue to apply for funding through the New South Wales Office of Water as it becomes available. So as the grants open up, we'll submit several funding applications, and hopefully we're more successful in the next round.
And sorry, I hope I don't put you on the spot, but we've just talked about blue-green algae and the concerns, and now we're looking at applying for a grant for securing the Tumbarumba water supply using water from the Manus Dam. Is that what it is?
No, separate matter. Yes.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Just wanted to clarify.
No worries.
Thanks to clear that up.
And sorry, one last question.
Yes, absolutely. Let's indulge you.
Look, I think if somebody was reading this, and I'm sure it's beautiful, and I'm sure it's wonderful, but the Cancoven Rose Garden at $385,000 seems like an awful lot of money. Yeah, how's it going? Is it good? Is that all it is? Is roses? I mean, I have seen pictures. But.
Yeah, it's the refurbishment of the old rose garden, which was significantly deteriorated, included garden beds, relocation of the old roses, plaques, turfing. It's part of the master planning for Cancoven, so it includes pathways, pedestrian lighting, linking the caravan park, the rose garden with the township or with the business area. Projects nearing finalisation, or the rose garden component of it. Projects, gone well to date.
Thank you. Councillor, how do you?
I
think Councillor Isselman was next on the...
Oh, thank you. A question, please, Mr Mayor, if I may, on the report, financial report. Does this report reflect the concerns that were expressed several council meetings ago on reserves that were being held in various areas of the council? And are we doing anything about that? Can I have an answer to that question?
I'll refer that to the Director Home.
Yes, through the chair, if I may, in terms of looking at reserves and financial administration practices in general terms, I can advise you that we have engaged a consultant or consultants to undertake a forensic financial audit across the two previous entities and now our combined new entity, just to have a look at financial practices. And
is that sort of relating to the $1.5 million people have been talking about? I heard at the Chamber of Commerce last night. It's lost, but probably so.
That's right, yeah. So we're looking at anomalies in the way we've reported information potentially and financial administration practices basically.
Not actually lost, it's just misplaced.
Yeah,
probably.
yeah, absolutely. Well, that's what we anticipate, but
Yeah.
it's good to have a financial audit to confirm that.
Yeah.
So we have had the first phase of that audit, and there's a second phase to happen, and we're expecting a report in the new year to let us know the results of that.
So, Mr. General Manager.
Through the Chair, if I might just clarify, there's no suspicion at this stage of any fraudulent activities, anything around that money. It's purely accounting practice.
I don't think anybody thinks that, really.
Councillor Rice.
Just in light of some of those projects that we've obviously had funded through the state government, it might be an idea to have some discussions with the Department of Premier Cabinet about how some of these things are funded. I mean, it seems absolutely obscene to me that, you know, we can't get $1 million worth of funding to secure water for a complete town, but we can put $400,000 of state government money into a bloody rose garden. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. How does that happen?
You expect me to answer that?
I mean,
But yeah, I might just refer that to the General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through the Chair, I suppose one of the important things about being part of the Canberra Joint Organisation is that we now have a regional approach to lobbying for infrastructure, and all the councils in the Canberra region are actually putting our priorities forward on those infrastructure and lobbying, how important it is to get those things done. There is always a balance between social amenity and the infrastructure, essential infrastructure that's needed in local government, but certainly the Canberra JO has got a very good process, and we're doing quite well in lobbying the state to fund the real essential infrastructure as a priority in our region.
And we have 4 projects on that infrastructure list with the Canberra JO, and they're all in the south.
Can I just make one comment on Councillor Lada's comment that if that money wasn't available from the government, those rose gardens would have died and gone, and they're very, very important to the Cancoban people. And I don't know how else it would ever be funded. I don't disagree with what you say, but they are really important to that community. You know, they were long term,
And they used to be beautiful.
and they used to be beautiful, and how else we would never be able to afford to do it. And I think that's probably something from that.
Thank you. Very well said. Thank you, Amanda.
Could I ask a
Yes, you may. Councillor.
Sorry, Amanda. on just page 169, when you go into the KPIs, could you just clarify those diagrams a bit more for you? So the operating performance, the ratios, and like, I just want you to clarify what it all means.
So we did review this one, and we're looking to put a bit more information in just against the OLG, what their expectations are. But the first one is just measuring the council's achievement in containing operating expenditure within its operating revenue.
And so having that blue one at 61% is going well.
That's going well, but we've got to recognise that the rates have been received in advance.
So it's not always going to be at 61%. No. Right, okay.
The own source revenue, so that's where we exclude all grants and contributions compared to total operating revenue, which excludes the capital grants and contributions.
Right.
So we've budgeted that must be the budgeted amount of 18 million, over 20 million. And as we change that will, like if there's a capital budget, like the $1 million pool grant should be reflected in that one. But what we'll do is we'll add another column just so you can see the OLG expectations compared to what we're actually tracking.
That'd be great. And the final one?
It's the current assets less all the external restrictions, and I think the expected is around 6. And I don't think the actual figures have flowed through, because you can see it's just a 1 as the indicator, but we'll be working on those to ensure.
Okay. So next month or we wait
next
for
quarter.
3 months?
Yeah, next quarter we'll provide a lot more information, and just we'll give you an idea of what the OLG standards are.
Terrific. So, okay, we'll look forward to that in 3 months' time. Thanks, Amanda.
Thanks, Amanda. Thanks, Councillor Ham. Nothing else?
If I may just, through the chair, just the ratios that are proposed by the Office of Local Government for us to report on, what you'll find is they'll be more indicative in our annual report when we look at the whole financial year. So you actually see, a bit of a skewed representation through the year.
Great. Okay. Put the motion, all in favour? Carried. Thank you. Now the next one is the governance and financial reports, and the recommendation is council receives the statements. Councillor Lardo, Councillor Ham.
Just with I've asked the General Manager to show us what it was last month so that we see the variations, and that will be incorporated in the reports from
So
now
you're
on.
asking that next time we see this that there was...
We can see the variations.
Yep.
But having looked at it, there's been very little variation.
And through the chair, if I may, by all means, we'll certainly incorporate information about any variations to make it easier to compare.
That would be very handy. Thanks, Ron.
Thank you. And I've been down to Grahamstown Road. I notice it's looking pretty good. It's great to see that fixed up. There's a bit more of it to go, but the bit that's done is terrific. Anything further on that?
Through the chair, can I just ask on page 51, Riverina Road, 121,000 was spent. What was that for?
Through the chair, that would be behind to answer that one, just to go through, but we can get back to you and advise you to what.
Can we come back to you on that?
Sure.
Thank you. Anything further? No. Put the motion, all in favour? Carried. Brings us to the minutes of the Audit Risk Improvement Committee. It's an extraordinary meeting. They're all extraordinary, I think, aren't they?
It was extraordinary.
Yeah. There's two recommendations there.
What was extraordinary? It was extraordinary because it was the financial statements for the whole year. And every once a year, you always have the extraordinary.
It's wholly
Through the chair, we have a audit committee regime of meetings, and because we're unsure, because we're waiting on the auditors to get back to us and the audit office to get back to us, we can't actually program the meeting to review the financial statements. Hence, we run an extraordinary meeting when we're ready for those statements to be presented to the committee. That's the only reason it's an extraordinary meeting.
Councillor Ham's moving. Councillor Wright.
Having been in attendance at that meeting, I must admit my confidence is growing more and more in this Audit Risk and Improvement Committee, and David Maxwell does a great job as the chair of the committee. And I'd just like to congratulate the council that the report's becoming so much clearer. The discussion is getting a lot more robust as we probably understand how the two councils, the merged council, is now working together. So, personally, I think it's improved greatly.
Councillor Wright.
Just ask in regards to risk. We asked for a risk report to be done on a road that was out there at Snowy Mountain Highway on that Forest Road, where the logging had been done. I don't recall ever getting a report back on that.
No, I don't recall either. But we'll chase that up for you, I think. We could.
Just for us to answer
I was just wondering, we had a member of the public give a speech about an issue with regard to a road, and I think we adopted that we would do a risk assessment on the road out off the Snowy Mountains Highway. It was a logging road. Can't remember the name.
Duns Road.
Duns Road. Where's that up to?
Yeah, I'd have to take that on notice and come back to you on that.
I know, I've been out there, and I know that they've sealed the section, they've sealed the from the highway into the first ramp. The section from there down to Reynolds' place is very good. It's just a gravel surface. They've sealed with co-contribution from the woolshed through to almost the bridge, and that's great. And they've widened the corner further out towards Takajo. So I think a lot of that's been done.
Sorry, I didn't realise that was the road in question. Yeah, that work was all done together in partnership with Hume Forests, who were taking logs out of there. So we did some dust suppression work to some of the residents, the entrance, and also some pull-off areas as well, so they could move the log truck safely through that section of road.
I haven't heard from any of the residents out there to say that's unsatisfactory, so that's always positive.
I've actually got positive feedback back from the residents.
Okay. Anything further from that? Put those two recommendations. All in favour? Carried. Thank you. Which brings us to the minutes of committee meetings. The first one we have is the Talbingo Progress Association meeting of the 10th of October. Just before we adopt that recommendation, just for everybody's everybody's information, all councillors went to Talbingo this morning and met with members of the Talbingo Progress Association regarding their concerns about the boat ramp and the associated area there. So we've done that, and we'll take some of those concerns when we meet with Snowy Hydro next week. So that's what we've done this morning. And I'd also like to note that the new tables and chairs up around the commercial district of Talbingo look fantastic. So maybe some more next year in the budget for two recommendations. Councillor Ismail.
Pass. Move the recommendation to be accepted, please.
Councillor Wright.
Question, please, if I may, Mr. Mayor.
Speaking for the motion.
Yes, please.
Lady.
If I may just call to the attention in business arising in these minutes, the Batlow Link Road, in reference to our negotiations and having that upgraded with forestry negotiations. A note in these minutes it says closed until November. So just asking if, through you, Mr. Mayor, I might have a response from Robin as to whether we're up to in relation to upgrading that and having those negotiations occur.
I know that it was closed for logging operations, and I see, as I was driving up there, I see significant activity there, or there's been significant activity there. I'm not sure where they're up to with that. Director Harvey?
Yes, if I may, through the Chair. The committee of the Talbingo Progress Ratepayers Association have just asked for some information about what the future situation is for the Batlow Link Road, and if it is to be closed at certain periods of time, when that would be. So I've undertaken to do some work with the asset planning and infrastructure directorate to find out a bit more information, take that back to the next meeting, which will be in a couple of weeks. Okay.
Thank you.
I just learned in the minutes that they've got their next meeting will be the 6th of February 2013.
Might be a typo.
That's in there.
I'd say that's a typo.
It might be.
Anything further? I'll put the recommendation. All in favour? Carried. Moving on. Minutes of Tumberfest Committee meeting, 10th of October 2018 and the 24th of October. There's two meetings there. There's 4 recommendations. Councillor Ham, Councillor Benjamin.
I would just like to, as it's a 355 committee, I'd like to see them change their terms of reference. We are responsible for overseeing this committee, and I think for them to appoint committee members without getting our approval is not in our best interests. I also feel that the media coverage, they talk about being able to promote media themselves, that maybe we need to look at do some media training with them.
If I may, through the chair. So there's a choice here if you're talking about the recommendation that's been moved for A and C. You can either talk to the movers and seconders about withdrawing that or move an amendment to that doesn't include 4A and C. So it's up do you, how you want to run that process?
No, I like A, 4A, I can, but the media coverage, you know, Tumberfest employ a qualified event person to do the media, and you know, we've never had a problem in the past with the media or anything like that. And media training, I'm very happy to take that back to the committee and say, look, council brought it up, let's do it, and very happy for that. But it's certainly important that the committee has, because it just moves so fast towards the event. If we had to be restricted on everything we're doing with the meeting, that would make it very important. With the appointed committee members not needing approval by council, I was there when that was put in. I must admit I didn't understand it clearly enough. But that, I mean, they've done the right thing here. They've listed the, that's all it is they've listed who the members are and whatever, so that's perfectly fine.
It just reads that they're going to put new members in willy-nilly, and I'm thinking...
Yeah, whereas that is not the case at all. So and they've followed the proper procedure.
So maybe their terms of reference needs to be changed to reflect that.
Well, the proposal is that we leave that in, the terms of reference, isn't it? Consider the proposed amended.
Yeah, through the chair. The proposal for A, well, this time they're proposing who the committee members are because that's what's included in the terms of reference. My reading of their proposal is that in future they don't come to council, they change their committee membership. So if you wanted to stick with what we have with all of our 355 committees, that the council approves the membership after consideration, then you wouldn't include 4A in your resolution. But if you're happy for the 355 committee to make their own choice on members of that committee, then you would leave it in there. So quite clearly they're saying they want to do it differently in the future, they don't want to come to council.
Well, at the moment they...
Point of clarification, please, Mr Mayor.
Yeah.
So if that particular amendment was to go through, then we as council would have to go back to the 355 committee terms of reference and change what is stated in there, because we have a very strict, very definite reference point for 355 committees, and that would be against the development of that.
So do you want to go to committee?
I would like to go to committee, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Seconder? Councillor Ham? All in favour? Okay, carry on.
So yes, I think that we've taken a lot of time and effort to make sure that as council we support 355 committees and we give a very definite guideline for the way a 355 committee is conducted, and we have resolved that and taken that on board. And it's a really important thing that if somebody such as the Tumberumba Fest committee say they don't want to have one of those particular directions from the review from the plan, well then that's not right. So my point is, they want to change the way that our 355 committees are operating. Then there's a different way of doing it rather than just they make up their own mind at their committee meeting. So my point is that it's important to reflect our actual...
And it's absolutely an excellent point, because it's not going to be just Tumberfest that the terms of reference template isn't going to work for. So I think that's an excellent point.
Councillor Smith.
I've just gone through this process of Batlow with the Batlow Development League, and they have been willing to adjust their ideas and terms of reference to fit in with council, and have done so. So I would be concerned at a different set of rules for another area, or another 355 committee that is not, it's different to what's been asked of the 355 committee in Batlow. The other point that I would make on point C about media coverage, if you want to leave that in, perhaps it should be adjusted to, or included to read, limited only to matters relating to Tumberfest. They should not be given opportunity to comment without council's knowledge and awareness on other matters, like, for argument's sake, in relation to demerging or something like that, they should be limited to making comments about Tumberfest only.
That's a very valid point. Councillor Marder?
Yeah, just in regard to C, I know it's probably already in the fine print, but probably just needs to be spelled out that it's within council's media policy that they can speak, not.
Yeah. But see, as I said, there's advantages of being a 355 committee. You get council support, you get council's insurance and the like. So there's advantages there. There's also disadvantages in you've got to follow council's fairly strict rules at times. There's also advantages in being an incorporated body in that you can basically run your show the way you want, but you don't get those advantages of council support and insurance. So I guess it's a choice, isn't it? They've made the choice to be a 355 committee, so I guess they have to follow the.
I agree with Gore's comments about the media coverage.
Absolutely.
And I don't think they want to make any comments on anything else either. But if it's in black and white, at least we know that fits in with the other 355 committees.
I guess that was my concern when I
read
the terms of reference.
I didn't even think of that,
So, point of clarification, the coordinator of the Tumbarumba Festival is an employed person?
She's contracted. She's not an employee of Snow Valley Council.
So if she's employed as a contractor for a 355, does she come under council regulations?
So she's a contractor for council.
So how does that fit with our media?
So she has to comply with our code of conduct. I might just refer to our executive officer who looks after communications regarding the details of our media policy there.
Sorry, Margaret, what was the question?
The coordinator of the Tumberfest person has to comply with the media regulation because they become part of council. So they would need to make sure that whenever they were talking to media, follow the laid down rules and regulations of Snow Valley's council.
So through the chair, Councillor Wilson, because Section 355 committees are essentially an extension of council itself, then all rules apply.
So the person involved with the coordinating would need to have clearance from yourself?
Unless there's an agreed and adopted phrasing in the terms of reference, which Councillor Smith has already indicated that's probably a possibility and a good idea.
Thank you.
Through the chair, if you're not sure about this one, my suggestion would be that you exclude it and advise the committee that you'll look into that matter and advise them further on that, because it is high risk media, and I think it's also got a reasonable amount of risk around the committee deciding their own membership, and it's very inconsistent with the rest of our 355 committees. So if you wanted to pull A and C out, we can look into that and advise them further.
Sounds like a good idea.
Move in second to happy with that. Councillor Benjamin, actually. So B becomes A, C and the former A go. All discussion.
Move out of committee.
I don't know if I can agree with that because I was at the meeting that passed it.
Well, you can vote against it.
Yeah, good. Okay.
Or you can abstain, which would be voting against it.
Move out of committee.
Moving out of committee. Second, Councillor Cross. All in favour?
Councillor Ham, just on a policy basis, there's nothing to stop you voting against because you've got further information. You're making a decision based on further information, and it's not that you're working against what you've said at the meeting, it's just that you're looking into it further. So up to you how you vote. I'm not telling you how to vote.
But you can change your mind.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, okay. And so the terms of reference as it stands at the moment are still in draft.
This raises a question for me. I don't vote at the Bathwater Development League meetings. I advise, I comment, I make suggestions, but I don't take part in any of their voting in terms of the recommendations they put to council. Is that not the appropriate way?
Through the chair, you are elected as council's representative on that committee. They are a 355 committee of council. You have the right to have a vote on that committee.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, I'll put the motion. All in favour? That's carried. Thank you. And I just do notice in their minutes it talks about the market stalls of Three Bridges at Tumut. I went to that as Councillor Hand did as well. They were sensational. It was really good to see a community come together and yeah, quite exceptional.
And had 2,000 people go through.
Yeah, yeah. So
there was a traffic jam in Tumut.
I'd certainly suggest people get along next year.
So, Mr Mayor, if I could just point of order come back to the Tumbarumba minutes. Did we pass 1, 2 and 3?
Yes. And just 4A and 4C.
So we passed the whole lot in that recommendation.
Yes.
Just we moved 1, 2 and 3 and part B of 4. And that's what we were doing. Yeah, just to clarify.
That's right. And we got the those committee members. We got information.
Yes. Yeah, that's fine. That's what I was doing.
Councillors, I think this brings us to the end of our ordinary agenda. Before we, Councillor Lana.
Can I just foreshadow a notice of motion for the December meeting that we put together a priority project list for the state and federal candidates.
So through the chair, the staff have already got on the agenda an advocacy plan for the December meeting. So, and that will we will workshop with councillors prior to that meeting, and we'll look at the main points that we'll be advocating to the state and federal government on during the election process early next year. If that was what you were chosen to.
So you and the staff are on the same page, Councillor Lana.
There you go.
So this concludes the ordinary meeting. Before we move it to, someone move that we move into confidential. Councillor Wright and Councillor Cross, in favour? No. Now moving to confidential.
Dealt with 3 matters in confidential. The first matter relating to the supply of bulk materials under request for tender 2018/09, and Council has resolved 5 points on that. That Council received this report on the outcomes of the request for tender 2018/9 for the supply of bulk materials. The Council resolved, in accordance with Section 55 of the New South Wales Local Government Act 1993, to accept the panel of suppliers for the supply of bulk materials as recommended by the evaluation panel and detailed in Table 4 of this report. Council authorised the General Manager to enter into contracts with companies recommended for the preferred panel of suppliers for the supply of bulk materials as summarised in item 2 above. Council authorised the General Manager to amend the order of preferred supplier panel for the supply of bulk materials as referred to in item 2 above, or purchase bulk materials through other procurement arrangements if the preferred suppliers fail to provide value for money for Council or comply with the statement of requirements and conditions of the contract for the supply of bulk material. And finally, the Council authorised the General Manager to exercise the 1-year extension option for the supply of bulk material panel contract subject to the satisfactory performance of the contract. In relation to the second item, request for tender 2018/13 for sewer rehabilitation. The Council resolved in accordance with Section 55 of the New South Wales Local Government Act 1993 to accept the tender from Institute Form for the provision of services for the rehabilitation of nominated sewer mains in Cancoban, Tumbarumba and Tumut for the 2018-19 financial year for the lump sum amount of $182,396.30 GST inclusive, and advise the unsuccessful tenderers in writing, and authorise the General Manager to enter into a contract with Institute Form for the rehabilitation of nominated sewer mains in Cancoban, Tumbarumba and Tumut. Is that in that? Sorry. And the third item, on procurement of road-based rescission of motion, the Council received the report on the purchase of road-based materials required to deliver projects for the Roads and Maritime Services, and amend Part B of the Council Resolution of the 26th of July 2018, Resolution number M211/18, regarding the purchase of road-based materials required to deliver projects for the RMS as referred to below. That A, not proceed with entering into a contract for Bald Hill Quarry Pty Ltd as resolved on the 26th of July 2018, and authorise the General Manager to enter into a contract with Bogo Quarry for the purchase of road-based materials required to deliver this year's projects for RMS. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager. This concludes the ordinary meeting of 22nd of November. Next meeting will be the 11th of December in Tumbarumba. Thank you very much.